All right, folks. So this one is going to be a little bit different. I might lose you right here, but we're not going to do any gameplay in this one. Instead, because I got Field Marshal just about a month after I started playing, and I had no intention of doing that. I don't have too much else to play. I'm ready to start drafting, is really what it is, at least until we reset here. But what I want to do in this episode is actually take a look at the decks I used to make it a Field Marshal. If you watched any previous episodes, you know that I make a ton of mistakes. Sometimes I know them as I'm making them, but uh, it's mostly it's these. Well, it's really these three decks we'll go through as quickly as I can and talk about what's in there. If you've seen some of the other videos, you've kind of heard me do the intro where I talk about what's going on. And then there's one with the Bloody 11th that is kind of just, I think it's my own thing. I've never run into it in any mirror match. But anyways, we're going to go with our Jagro deck first. You could take a look at our wild card situation. I've tried to hold as many as I can, but I still wanted the decks to be like good enough. But in these decks, there's quite a few elites and specials that everybody gets, usually in the level 12 decks that you unlock. And otherwise, they tend to be chock full of limited and standard cards. These are not. It's not like a train of elites and specials that you sometimes run into on ladder. So, anyways, without any further ado, Jaeger Regiment. I saw a lot of people playing against me. It didn't seem that good for how prevalent it was, but I know card draw is important, but man, is it important. Plus, it comes in with Blitz. And so I'm pretty sure I spent down a number of German limiteds, is what they're called, to make sure that I had three of them. They play in here. They might also play in the US Frontline deck that we'll take a look at, I think, next. So this is the one thing I used an Elite Wildcard on. Otherwise, I'm hoarding them. And this seemed such a staple of Jagro and what it wants to do that it just seems silly not to have it. So there it is. Type 94K or Type 94 TK. I don't know if I got this in a level 12 deck or if I just randomly pulled it out of a pack. Whichever one happens, it's a very good card. We could have two, but we only have one, so there it is. But it is, a 1 plus 0 op cost tank, blitz tank, that gets +1 attack as it damages the enemy HQ. I think everybody gets this in the level 12 pack. And it almost always draws you at least one card. Doesn't have Blitz, but not everything has to have Blitz. And so, yeah, card draw, which we'll see coming up next. There is card draw here, and we are frequently in the front line. And so when we have a Japanese unit in it, we have 4 of these for that reason. It's our main card draw expectation. I think we have 2 Type 93s. I think one came in the level 12 deck. The other, I'm pretty sure, just came out of a pack. I can't imagine I spent a wild card on this, which I kind of get it now, but I don't know. I hated this card, or I didn't love this card for a long time. But there it is. It is, after all, remember, a tank, and that's one of the things I got to remember when we get to Blitzkriegen. This seems like just a staple of every Jagro deck, or at least almost every Jagro deck that I've seen. And so this probably is worth crafting a third, but we've done okay with 2, and so we'll stay with 2. Hey, it's 0 op cost, 1 to put down a 2/1 blitzer. Help us get that front line, yes please. I mean, if you want the pure aggro start right here, we're going to play this on turn 1. This comes down on turn 2, if this is still alive, and you now have a 2/2 blitz tank that operates for nothing, and you're throwing 4 damage into the enemy HQ on turn 2. Feels good. 51st Recon. Yeah, I just got this in a pack, and I was like, all right, well, let's see how it goes. It hasn't done terribly. A lot of times what it does is it comes in, and it just blitz attacks into something that has 2 toughness left, and that's it if I'm on the back foot. If I'm going forward, yeah, it moves up to the front, and it's kind of easily gobbled up with only 2 toughness. I just haven't drawn it at the right time when the enemy is gaining 8 defense on their HQ. I think it happened once, and I messed up the attack. But anyways, that's the 51st Recon. It's one that I think is probably one of the easier cards to swap out, but it's in there for now. Panzer Grenadier, I think I have 3 copies of this, and I think I spent German limited wild cards to get them because I also put them in the American deck. So I'm pretty sure the 64 Panzer, the P-35, and the 738 Jaeger. I think they all show up in some numbers in the American-German frontline deck we're going to take a look at next. But here, why we want it, well, it's a 2-3 blitz for 2 that operates for 1. And then basically if it starts the turn in the front line, you're going to get that 2 credit refund. And that's, in this deck, that's almost surely a new blitz something or other. And so we like that. 24th Cav Regiment is... it's really got, I don't know, I call it shadow card draw. That might not be the right term, but it is. I mean, what it is it dies and it takes another one of these out of your deck, so it thins your deck of other 24th Cav. And, you know, there's a lot of other things that are more powerful than it than we'd want, and it puts it right back into your hand. And so, and with 3 attack, you know, if it's not answered, it can do a lot of damage to the enemy HQ. And so we have 4 copies. I'm pretty sure I didn't naturally draw all of those from our packs, and so I might have spent some... standard wild cards on those. Akita Regiment. Akita is another one that I feel like I could swap this out at some point. I think we're down to 2 copies. It has the potential to do a lot of 2-for-1s or 1-for-1 plus 2 damage to the enemy HQ. You know, if you do that and you have the first signal regiment cooking, then you can do a fair amount of damage to the enemy HQ. But it's just okay. Here I have 1 copy of the 22nd Infantry, and so we put that in the back line, hopefully not to do any fighting, but it usually always draws us a card on the first turn, replaces itself, and we might be able to get a little bit more value out of it later. 39 Panzer Grenadier. It's in here because I got it. That's the only reason it is in here. It has been okay in playing so far. It honestly is not one I've played. I've actually been able to play a ton. But the potential for 3 credits to this ends up being a 6-3 in the front line. You don't, because you're just going to swap a position with a friendly unit, so you're not using your op cost to go into the front line. The potential to do that, I think, is great. And if the unit you switch with is something like your 0 op tank, and we have P-35s, we have the Type 94s, and just other tanks that have operation costs that haven't moved yet, you can get that tank back into the front line and attack if it hasn't already done that. Now, this can't attack unless you do something else to it the turn it came in, but still, presenting a 6-3 for 3 credits, and then it's going to attack the next turn for 1, it's not terrible. And it's one of those things that probably in a Jaguar deck, your opponent's going to want to answer because they don't want 6 damage coming into their HQ. Type 97 is another one of those that I'm kind of meh, I'll keep it here. You know, it's a 3-3 tank for 3, which is not earth-shattering, but it does immediately have an impact. And then it gives all your friendly infantry, and we've seen a lot of it at this point, +1 attack. And so that's the kind of immediate benefit. Plus it's a tank, so though it's not a blitz tank, which would be the best, it still means that on our next turn, particularly if we've been holding Blitzkrieg, we can move it into the front line and have an attack with that Blitzkrieg buff once it's in the front line. So, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. I think everybody gets this in the level 12 deck, or at least it seems like everybody and their brother has this. We have 1 copy, so it's in here. Well, you can only have 1 copy. It's an elite, so there is that. But it, has the potential for 2v1ing when it comes down. Take out the other side's 0-4 or whatever it is, and then blitz yourself into the front line and get ready to attack after that. Amphibious Assault is there, I would say, primarily to go after guards, or maybe other 0-4s that you don't want to accumulate value, but we don't want to be spending time attacking big hefty guards that are wasting time, maybe whittling down our units. We just want to get rid of them and let our infantry and tanks focus on beating the enemy HQ. Blitzkrieg we have 2 copies of. It has won me a number of games. It's one that I just have a bad opinion of, even though I think everybody, their brother's dog, their brother's dog's cat, they all play 2 copies of it. They'll play at least 1 copy of it. It's because there are too many games I've lost where I'm sitting there and the only thing or the only things in my hand are a Blitzkrieg or 2 Blitzkriegs. And I'm just losing on board, and I'm like, this is absolutely doing nothing for me. But I've probably forgotten the number of times it has won me games. And it is surprising how even playing, into Field Marshal, how many people seem to not notice that you're probably holding Blitzkrieg, and they don't seem to contest the front line. Anyways, that's a different talk. K-45, I got it, so I'm playing it. And, it basically comes in as a 6-3 fighter. I mean, on the plus side, it could interdict an enemy bomber that's trying to attack something you want to keep alive in your backline. Maybe like your, well, the only other things I could think of that you'd really care about have smoke screens. So I don't know. It could protect at least your HQ, but really you want it there because on the next turn you're gonna be able to do 6 damage in the air to the enemy HQ, right? Unless they have a guard, some other way to keep you from doing that. And so that is a potential finisher. Winter Regiment, I got it in a pack. I was very happy. This is a card I sense I don't have the skill level yet to get the maximum benefit out of it. It feels like it frequently trades, and then I get a 1/1 copy. And that ability down there to fully repair it when it salvages a unit is crucial. And so it's something that, I need to play a little bit more with and try to maximize its value, because it's huge potentially. And it's one of those few ways that I feel like if you're down on board, it can potentially help you bring it back. Sendai, I have 2 copies. I think everybody gets one in the level 12 deck, and then I got another one just randomly in a pack. So there it is. It's there. It's removal against things that are otherwise going to run away the game. In aggro deck, you're probably also going to want to remove like guards that you don't want to have to fight through, and so this can just sit in the back line with smokescreen and do that. I have 1/20th Panzer Grenadier. This kind of gives you just a 4th Panzer 35T, plus you get to buff a tank, and we have a couple of other tanks besides the Panzer 35T, but it's there because it's there. Empire of the Sun, well, again, it's here because I had it in I got it in a pack, and I was like, all right, we'll do it. We don't have that many tools in long grindy games, but this is one, and it's potentially a huge card draw. A lot of times it might get you 3 or 4 cards, but sometimes against the big tank decks it gets you way more than that. And I have turned around losing games with this card, and so certainly as a one of, it makes sense. It's kind of an exotic way to end up with card draw. So that's my Jaguar deck. I know that there probably were a lot more specials in there than it seems, but I think they're like specials that people tend to see around. But the elites were either those that came in the packs I randomly got, or in this one case I actually spent a wild card on. All right, the other. So this is I kept the name. It's the I think it's the original name of the level 12 deck you get. 4 Greyhounds. 4 Greyhounds because I put Calliope in here, and so I don't mind buffing the backline. But Greyhounds I like, particularly with Blitzkrieg, and as you can probably see down below, we have 2 Blitzkriegs. But if there's nothing else to do on turn 1, you can put this down and then figure out something else for the next turn. And sometimes that happens. But you can also hold this in hand until you're ready to play out the Blitzkrieg. If you have the front line, throw this down, move it to the front line, throw down Blitzkrieg. And so for very little, this ends up swinging for a lot. The 164th, it's obviously better if it's not the first unit you play out. I kind of hate playing this one out because it just begs to be answered. But honestly, if your enemy's going to waste like any sort of meaningful removal on it, you're only losing a +1/1 on one unit. It's not a big deal. The aforementioned 738th Jaeger Regiment, it made an appearance in Jaguar, made an appearance here. It's a little concerning that it's that good that it makes sense in both, but it's here for the same reasons. We want to be in the front line, and if we can get card draw off it, yes please. For Freedom, I have one, so I'm playing one. It cycles, gives you +1/+1. I'm cool with that. Panzer 35T, again, this is deja vu all over again, but it's here for the same reasons it was there in the Jaguar deck. I mean, if you can... I don't like playing this first, so this is one of the awkward things about this, is that there aren't really... like I would probably only want to put this down on turn 1 if I had this in hand, because I'm willing to risk not giving it 1/1 for this to come down on turn 2, operate for 0, and then if this gets destroyed later, the P35T gets to become a 3/3 that's attacking for 0. So that's pretty cool. But otherwise, this sometimes has to wait and come out later, but then you just time it with Blitzkrieg, and that's okay. The L4 Grasshopper, it's here because of Calliope and the M4 Sherman. Those are really the reasons that it's here. It makes them cost 1 less, and it gives them Blitz, which means Calliope, if you have the credits for it, can come in, ping off 2 damage, and then it can use its 2 to attack, and so that's fine. So I definitely have at least 2 of these Panzer Grenadiers, because there's 2 in here. And I want it in here for all the same reasons. Sometimes if we have the 35T but we don't have other good infantry down, might wait till turn 3 to play this out into the front line, hope it doesn't get removed, and then on turn 4 we can drop the P35T and play it for free while the Panzer Grenadier has upgraded to veteran. All right, 22nd Infantry, again, you've already seen this, and it's here for the same reason. If it dies, it dies, but it usually pays for itself in drawing you a card as soon as you play it. Ambush. Well, that's the ability on here. I don't know why I said it like that. But anyways, the 442nd, yeah, it's in here because I have it. So my thinking for it is that so it doesn't have blitz, but if you can get it into the front line, now this is a 4 attack thing that the other side has to remove if they're going to take back the front line. And if they do it on their turn, it just adds a copy, not out of my deck. It just creates a new copy in my hand. And so it cycles. And so as long as you're not stressed for credits elsewhere, I know it doesn't have blitz. It's not a perfect card. It's 3 credits. What do you expect to pay for? But I have it. And so I like to put it in that front line as something that usually requires something fairly beefy on the other side to remove. And if they can't, that means the front line is open for Blitz infantry to come into or Blitz tanks to roll through. Speaking of which, all right, it's fine for what it costs. I have 1 Hellcat, so I'll play it. Compared to the M10A1, I just don't really care for this. Maybe it's one of those, like, it's just done so well, but it usually comes in and it trades for something else that sometimes has already killed something. So maybe it's just been a lot of bad luck, but I've played this a lot. There is only 1 copy, so we won't see it as much as the M10A1, but I think it probably is fine. I don't know, though. If I could only have a combination of 3 between the Hellcats and M10A1, I would probably just cut that Hellcat, because suppression, to me, seems so much better. I'm usually credit starved with other things to try to play this, move it to the front line, then throw down Blitzkrieg, and then attack with everything that is up there. I mean, that would have to be pretty late in the game in order for that to happen. And so this to come in and suppress something that's just absolutely broken, I've found to be far more helpful. The First Marines I did not love when I first started playing this game. I have grown to appreciate it, and I think it has to do with the fact that for 4 credits, you can end up with a 3-4, and I think that toughness 4 is a fairly big boon to it in the front line. It's not that the opponents won't have any way to remove it, but the range of options are quite limited, and so it generally ensures that you'll have at least 1 unit in the front line when this comes down. The extra ability to give your HQ smokescreen, that's fine, but that's not why I'm playing it. It's just because of that body, particularly the 4 toughness. I like being able to hold up the front line, and then if you have a Blitzkrieg coming down the pike, you just add 3 attack to that, and you just have fun. Calliope. So you have to deal with fast decks in some way, and I don't know that I always love training, particularly training. How about trading? If you're in the back foot against Jaggro and they're just playing a lot of expansions and you're stuck in your back line, even if you're moving your blitz stuff through, but you're just trading 1 for 1, they have enough expansions and card draw, you might end up in deep trouble. So I have no more fun in this game, I think, than when there are 2 1 toughness things coming at us. And it's the only 2 things in that line, and they're right next to each other, and we play Calliope and we knock out 2 units. It's great. If we've played the Grasshopper, you can potentially get this down for 2 credits. The 2 attack cost it's a bit heavy for only dealing 2 damage. It actually seems really heavy, but it's attack damage that can't be answered, right, if you are the one doing the attacking. And if you happen to have an M8, I find a lot of times I end up putting the Calliope down first to maybe clear the front line press, and then I'll play the Greyhound out the next turn before Calliope attacks, and then it starts swinging for an unanswerable 3. And again, some of the more aggressive decks that don't have a lot of 4 or more toughness things, Calliope can basically knock out a unit a turn. So that's nice. It does not dovetail well with our next card, which is Blitzkrieg, which is there to just do Blitzkrieg things. You know, whatever you got in the front line, plus whatever tanks you can move into the front line, drop Blitzkrieg, get the attack. That's what it is there for. Its strengths are what it was in the Jaguar deck, as are its weaknesses. M for Sherman. It's here for card draw. Right, so we've pointed out a number of places where there's card draw, and there are a number of spots. And so the card itself is meh, right? But it's perfectly okay for this thing to sit in the back line if I don't need it in the front line until it's Blitzkrieg in time and we have the credits to pull it off. And then we move it up and do its thing after it's drawn its 2 cards. Stars and Stripes. I don't know. It's in here. And I guess potentially, if the other side has a really good turn in their backline, we might be able to knock a bunch of things down. It can deal damage to things with Smokescreen. And, you know, if we've really jammed up the other side's units in their backline, then Stars and Stripes helps. I found that it's kind of meh, but it is there. The alternative might be that other 5 credit, give 0+0/+3 defense, +3 defense to friendly units, and draw a card. That would help things survive in the front line if we have the front line. But anyways, it's here for now, right? We've done okay with it, but this may well come out. 20 Panzer Grenadier. It's here for the same reason it's in Jaguar. Oh, this is the card I was talking about. We can do it. And actually, I don't think I can add a third because right now I only have 2. And I don't know that I'm going to spend a wild card for another one. But yeah, this is one of those flex spots. We could certainly remove this if we wanted to. Strategic Bombing. All right, so it knocks out a credit slot, and it can punish things in the back line. It says all targets in the enemy support line. We're going after the HQ. Let's try to knock the HQ down too. This is another one of those, I don't know. I don't know if this belongs in here. It doesn't really play into the front line thing. It's just one of those cards that, you know, if the other side has nothing but, you know, good targets, it can come in and it can destroy an enemy unit and then attack. It's not a blitz bomber though, and so it's a bit slow. It does have 5 toughness and heavy armor 1, but I find a lot of times by the point it comes out, it's meh. But if you can time it right, it has also turned around games where you just destroy the thing that they thought was going to wipe your HQ. They're not ready for this. They don't have a way to deal with it, and then you start hitting their HQ. And if you can get a Greyhound in the front line, then these bombing runs do 6 damage. So, anyways, that's the version of Pedal to the Metal that we have going. I struggled for a long time with getting a German deck, but it's basically the German frontline deck. It's just playing more German cards and less American ones. The Panzer IIA, I don't love it, but it does have Blitz and Smokescreens, so you can just park it in the back line if you have nothing else to do on turn 1. And you see in here, our turn 1 options, they're not great. It's all right, but so you probably just play it and park it until it's Blitzkrieg time or something else time. Card draw, we already explained it. Greyhound, we already explained it, although we don't have Calliope, but it's really there to get an early contest into the front line. And with 3 toughness, it can do that. And if we want to make sure that Jaeger Regiment has a target of something of ours, excuse me, we could always potentially throw it down on our Greyhound. Jaegers are there. Man, I'm really getting my wild cards out of those. 164th are here. Again, probably not great to play until you have something to play them on. So sometimes it's an awkward hand when you have 738th and the 164th and just not a lot of other good early plays. But I managed to kind of play through it at this point. Dive bombing, I found that usually the 1 damage ping ends up killing something the enemy didn't want to die far more often than setting its attack to 0, but that also matters. If you want to go after a big guard unit, just big anything unit, and you don't want it hitting back, that is a way to do it. Yet again, 22nd Infantry, Panzer 35T. Stop me if you've heard this before. Okay, this is the one that actually has 3 Panzer Grenadiers in it. And, you know, if the enemy can't remove them before they become veteran, we get free credits, and we get a slightly stronger Panzer Grenadier. So, yes, please. Africa Core, this is one I would probably be okay with cutting, but it gets us access to some elite cards, and we don't have very many. I remember I got Comet out of this in a recent game, and yeah, we pretty sure we won that one. Panzer 3L, I think everybody gets the level 12 deck, so yeah, it's okay in this. Its ability is not going to be super great because I think we're mostly infantry and armor. I don't remember if I kept any fighters or bombers. See, the American deck actually had one fighter and one bomber in it. But anyways, it's there. It's a blitz tank. It's 3/5 for 3, so sure. Hellcat, yeah, it's here because it's here. And again, my feelings about it are the same as they were before. I actually like having the first Marines in here for the reasons I liked in others. I have not really run into other people playing the 304th Panzer Grenadier. I like this one early on, and I've kind of learned to like it even more. And so one copy, usually for 4 credits, I end up with a 5/5 in the front line, ready to attack the next turn. And it's one of those things that the deployment, it's a deployment ability, and it blitzes in the front line before the enemy can respond to it. So I like it. I'm usually trying to damage the enemy HQ. Again, we have a lot of fast tanks that can do that pretty quickly. So I like it as a one of. I don't know about more than that. I think I actually very recently got a second copy. I got both copies of Encirclement very recently. Like Winter Regiment, this is a card I think I need to learn more, because I'm kind of like, I don't know. When I've had it in hand and I've looked at my front line, I'm like, man, is this really worth 3 credits? Like, what are my good targets here? And so we'll see. I mean, there are potentially good targets, right? The Panzer III. I mean, these other cards that conceivably it would be something that costs 3 or more that's pretty big, but it just doesn't have blitz, and that this would then give it blitz. That's what I would assume. But yeah, I got to play more with this one and get its timing down. Panzer 38, it's nothing. I'm not even talking about Blitzkrieg and M10A1. Everything about them is, that I said before, still holds. Panzer 38T, it's card draw, and again, it can sit in your backline until you're ready to Blitzkrieg if you want, or you can shove it into the front line and see if it holds out. Panzer 3H is one of the ways we can get card draw with a little bit of choice. It's okay. Again, if it sits in the back until attack time, that's fine. So we needed some blitz tanks. I felt like we had quite a bit of blitz infantry in the American deck, certainly in the Japanese deck. It felt like there was less in here. I'm not sure that was true, but it felt like there was. So we had to have some blitz tanks, or at least I wanted some. And so, it's nothing special, right? But we had 2 or 3 copies, and so we put this in as just a fine blitz tank. It would be credit demanding to play this with Blitzkrieg, but it would be 7 damage, so it's not bad. 20 Panzer Grenadier, it's back, and Bismarck I recently put back in the deck. I'm not sure about it. I'm not even sure where I got it. It was early on I got it, so this was either in a pack that like level 12 deck, or randomly just got a Bismarck. I don't remember, but it's always funny when you're playing against somebody who's like absolutely sure that they're gonna win, and they forget about Bismarck, and then they lose out of nowhere. So it maybe because this feels like an aggressive deck, and once the board starts pushing back against us and we can't control the front line, we don't have many tools that can deal with that. So if we are, but we've whittled down the enemy HQ enough, Bismarck can usually go over the top and finish a game off. Okay, that is supposed to say self-damage shell. If you can't tell, I was typing that one on mobile. So, yes. But you get the point. This one is one I tried out in an early video, and I did it primarily with tanks. And I was messing around with it and the Brits a lot, the Soviets and the Brits a lot, because I couldn't really find anything I liked. But this did surprisingly well. I started playing this at level 2, like right before you go to Field Marshal, because I kind of wanted to lose with it and give myself some more time before I, didn't want to get to Field Marshal. And I think it went like 4 and 5 or 5 and 6 against other level 2 and Field Marshal players, and I was like, wow. It in particular, just look at how many, I never get their name, standard and limited cards there are. So if you've never seen this card before, you probably haven't played recently. But again, it's one of those things where everybody's cats and their cat's dog is playing these. I think it seems that way. But this is good because it ends up. So if you don't know what it does, when it becomes veteran, you draw 2 cards, and we have a number of tanks with 4 more attack. Not that many, not as many as you might see in like the US or something else deck. All I can tell you is that it hasn't been a problem getting this to draw cards. It doesn't necessarily happen on turn 3, but I don't need it to because I have other cards to play. But anyways, that's it. So the self-damage stuff here is super useful against aggressive decks. I mean, they got 3 or 4 things out there with 1 toughness, and you just plop one of these down. It's like, come on. It's incredible value, and as you'll see, there are other cards in here that are going to play well off of that. This I got randomly in a pack. So it's the Soviet 04, and because we're dealing self-damage, this is actually something where as our stuff dies, we actually get HQ defense back. And so it kind of mitigates the thing that makes this work is self-damage. The liability with self-damage is that you damage yourself so much that the other side comes in and just beats you over the top. This kind of pushes back against that and buys you some time. Bloody Sickle, it's self-damage, it's cycling. And once you start playing it, you see how many good targets there are with 1 health left, and you just knock them out. Burning the Sky, yeah, I put 1 in there because I'm concerned about bombers. I feel like blitz bombers in particular, or fighters, or just, because we don't have that many guards. Well, we might, but we'll see. This sometimes it does nothing, but frequently it finds a good target, and so I like that. I can't say enough good things about this card, Mobile Defense. I mean, it's a pretty unassuming limited card, but I found that against aggro decks, you can plop this down on turn 2 and be pretty sure that they're not going to hit your HQ on turn 3. And on your turn 3, if they have stuff in the front line, they have 1-up cost, you can probably trade into 2 things. And so it's basically 1 card that will knock out 2, and it protects your HQ for a turn. I don't know what else you want for 2 credits. In the late game, when you have a lot of credits, or you have a lot more credits, and you don't mind maybe attacking across the front line into the enemy back line, again, 3 attack, 2 defense, guard units. Yeah, I'll take that. So I know I said we don't have that many. We don't have a lot of guards, but we actually have enough that I got 2 of these randomly, and I kind of shoehorned them in here. And again, it hasn't been a problem yet getting these to draw 2 cards. Worst comes to worst, you're just going to draw 1 card. It is what it is. This card, I've only started playing with it, and it just works. Like, I don't know how else to explain it. Again, it's that deal 1 damage to a unit in your HQ. So it's kind of the same thing as Bloody Sickle, but it's a 2/2 body for 1 more 1-op cost. And so it can frequently come in, finish off something that's been whittled down, and then it'll attack into something else that has 2 toughness left. And if you have, 329th out, this thing is wiping stuff off the board. It's getting wiped, but it's adding health back onto your HQ. So for sure, this thing wants your HQ to get damaged because it gets +1/+1 each time your HQ takes damage, regardless of the source. And it gets guard the first time that your HQ takes damage. So if the enemy won't do it, then you can always damage your HQ, buff your thing, give it guard, and make your HQ that much harder to get at. 845th. So it's in here, and it's not self-damage. The whole idea here is to get this thing in front of something that can deal a whole lot of damage, have that deal damage to this, and then it adds HQ defense to your depleted HQ. I think the reason why this doesn't feel, particularly recently, so good is that almost as soon as this gets played, I've noticed my opponents want to remove this thing. I've played against this card. I don't feel that way. I feel like do just enough to kill it, and it's fine. But my opponents will, for whatever reason, this thing's hanging out in the back line. They want to get rid of the 840. So I'm like, all right, you know what? If that's what you want to spend your removal on, you go right ahead. I'm using From the People rather than the 6 damage to a ground unit because I'm concerned about fighters and bombers. They seem to be the kind of one thing that I don't have a lot of great answers to. And so at least early game, late game, it's not going to do enough. But it could do that. It can also deal 3 damage to the other side, 0-4, and then you can use any of your 1 damage pings to finish it off. And so, if you want to deny the other side value early on in the game, that's a way to do it. First Responders is in here partly as a contra aggro tech, also here to add potentially beefy guards, and it also gives another enabling unit for Stiff Upper Lip to draw that second card. But that's why it's there. It doesn't play into the self-damage or anything like that, but it is what it is. So 15th Motor Rifles. I just got it in a pack a while ago. This is pretty good, I think, in a self-damage deck because you want to be the one dealing damage to your HQ and then hopefully repairing it. And as long as this is out, your HQ is immune to damage, right, on enemy turns. So even if they're playing like commandos and the pings were going to go there, they're not going to deal damage to your HQ. This also is one of the other ways that we try to mitigate bomber threats, because with fighters we could potentially put guards out. I'm pretty sure that fighters still have to fight guards before, but bombers don't. Artillery is another potential concern. And so while this will guard units in the HQ, it can be anywhere, right? So this could be in the front line. It doesn't have to be guarding the HQ. It just makes your HQ immune to damage on enemy turns. Convoy HX-175. This could probably be removed, but 1 copy in here to draw 2 cards. I just cut this down in favor of this because it was 1 credit less. And it's, again, in practice, it hasn't been hard to hit this. But this is probably more reliable. The Su-76, it seems really good. And I have 4 copies in here. I don't know. And my guess is it's because it's one of those things that also tends to draw removal. But if you want to get early aggressive or somewhat early aggressive, if you have 12th guards out on turn 1, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing that. But if you do, and it looks like we removed our other enabler. Yeah, we did for the Soviet tank deck. That's okay. And then this comes down on turn 3. You then get to draw 2 cards off it. What I found is that, and one of the reasons why I tend to play this a little bit later, I usually want to play this and then play the thing that's going to trigger it. Because otherwise, the other side is frequently going to try to find a way to suppress or remove this, and then you've lost 2 cards. And outside of this, we don't have a ton of card draw. Well, okay, so we have some, right? Bloody Sickle is there. It does its thing, but it's not a ton, right? So there's a fair amount, but it's lost cards. And so I tend to wait for turns, maybe a 4 credit turn where you just play the guards and then play this, and it's fun. But if you don't mind gambling, for sure, yeah, you can drop this turn 3, draw your cards, veteran this thing up, and then you can start attacking with a 5-4 on turn 4. So I just got 2 copies of these recently. No wild cards. It was just, I guess it was time for me to start getting these. This is kind of shadow card draw. It's not card draw, but it adds the T-34 1942 to your hand. So it comes in as a guard, so it's an enabler for Stiff Upper Lip. It guards the HQ, so I guess we do have a lot of guards here. And then when it dies, it becomes a 5/5 blitz tank, which is just like the ultimate vanilla medium, and I don't mean that in a bad way, Blitz tank, which I've cut down to 1 copy because I know that I can get a copy from each of those. The Yak 9, it's one of those other few ways we have to deal with, this would be more late game, mid to late game fighters and bombers. And if it gets destroyed, we then get a random Soviet card out of our deck. So we had one, so we put it in. Is what it is. 34th Guards, I had one for a while, and I got 2 recently opening packs. And so now that we're up to 3, and probably a 4th would be, I would be okay with that. This is really what makes this self-damage work, at least for me. There are better cards, but I haven't spent wild cards on them. But I find that even if it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot, it seems to work. Between Bloody Sickle doing its thing, 95th Rifle Regiment doing its thing, the SU-76 doing its thing, that as long as these are in hand, it's usually easy enough to play these things for 1 credit or no credit. And yeah, that just seems like fine value, considering I already want to do the other stuff that's in my hand. It's not like I'm doing something I don't want to do, and we have ways to protect the HQ and build it back. So that's the self-damage shell one. It needs some work and it could use some upgrades, but I've been very surprised how well it's played so far. All right, and here is a deck that I am certain I have never run up against it. And it's just me because I'm weird. I've said it in other videos, but my favorite card in Cards has got to be the Bloody 11th. Just the color, particularly the color on there, looks really awesome. And so this deck is basically a Bloody 11th deck, and it's built around the idea of getting Bloody 11th out, protecting it, buffing its defense, and then otherwise just letting it go to town. So it's odd, right? It only plays 9 units, and I know what everybody's thinking. Like, there's no way that this deck wins. This deck did surprisingly. It won more games than it lost in Field Marshal at ranks like 2, 3, 5. It did fine. I was surprised how well it did. I think mostly because nobody really expects it. Anyways, no retreat. It's one of the benefits of taking the Soviet ally is that if you're going to buff up the Bloody 11th, or it's just going to buff itself up, you don't want it to then be suppressed or retreated off the board in your hand, in which case all of that's gone. So we actually could run a 3rd copy, but because we have 4 Bloody 11ths and we have a number of buffs as is, if you spend too much on orders and countermeasures and you don't have enough units, you have a problem. So Interception is kind of a stand-in for no retreat. I'm usually concerned with things that are going to hit Bloody 11th. We have more. I believe we have more copies of these if we needed them. But I found right now 2 and 2 is okay. We just got a 3rd copy of Cup of Tea. I really prioritize adding defense to Bloody 11th because its attack is just going to go up, but it still takes damage in combat. And so even though it gets +2 when it survives, if it takes 5 damage, right, and only gets 2 back from its ability, it's still down 3 and you can lose it. So even if this is just 1 credit to just put +2 defense on Bloody 11th, I don't try to do that, but if that's what happens, that's what happens. Winter Warfare. It's there as a counter aggro thing. That's really the reason it's there. I have no other real explanation why that's in this deck. Kangaroo Transport is my favorite synergy card, and probably 4 could become 3, but I have 4 copies, and so I have 4 copies in there. But little else, I've found no greater joy yet in Cards than, what is it, turn like 8 or something like that. We play Bloody 11th for 4. We have Kangaroo Transport for 1, so that's 5. We move it up for 6. Okay, and then it can attack for 7. So we actually only need 7 credits to do that if we don't want to throw some other buff on it. So I like this. Adding the +1 heavy armor is fine. And sometimes when I'm like, they're not going to kill this Bloody 11th, I'll throw a 2nd Kangaroo Transport on there. It's a waste, but to just have them force them to fight through a heavy infantry with +2 heavy armor, it's fun to watch. You got to have some fun in this game. This is here again. It's really the damage that tends to get held up, but this is also a counter aggro tool. I need to stall a little bit, and this is also in a case where there's something on the board that could kill Bloody 11th, and I need a turn to do something else to try to save Bloody 11th, or at least get more value out of Bloody 11th before it dies. And so I'll happily ping that. So this has two uses. Okay, after Kangaroo Transport and Bloody 11th, this has become my third favorite card. I think you're supposed to use it with guard units, maybe. I don't know what you're supposed to use it with, but this is just, you have 1 credit at the end of turn. You just throw this thing up as insurance. And opponents are never expecting it, even after you've done it to them once or twice. They never take into account that they might need to do a little bit more attack. So many times, the opponent's like, all right, I'm finally going to kill this Bloody 11th. Just enough attack to finish this thing off, and then Entanglement shows up. And they lose their unit. Bloody 11th doesn't get killed. It gets stronger, and it gets +2 defense back in addition to the +2 defense. And add a garrison unit to your support line. I mean, we want Bloody 11th. That's why we have Kangaroo Transport here if we can. We want Bloody 11th in the front line. We're also going to want as many guards in the front line as we can get. Because we actually want guards to be protecting the Bloody 11th. I don't care if the guards die, but I want Bloody 11th to choose the engagements it gets. And so Entanglement is, again, at the levels I've been playing, I can't say enough good things about it. Burning Sky, yeah, we don't have a lot of great, as I said in the other one, we don't have a lot of great options for those who want to use Blitz Bombers or Fighters or other big things that we maybe can't. I mean, Fighters, I think we can deal with through guards, but other things we can't. This is an anti-aggro tech, but it's also, after we've gotten through the aggro phase, this is a send this up with the Bloody 11th and have, this thing eat the enemy's attack first. I mean, they probably have enough to, save the good attack for the Bloody 11th. But anyways, it's there. It's 1 credit. Like, what do you want? I thought I took this out of this deck, but I've thought that many times. And yet it keeps showing up. So this is a card. Okay, so the reason it's here is to kind of pop it maybe on Bloody, when Bloody 11th is up there, but there's also a bunch of those garrison units because of Entanglement or other guards that just don't have a lot of attack. This is going to give them some, if you're a 0-3, you're now a 1-4. Now the other side can't just hit you without penalty. You can actually do something. And if we've put guards around Bloody 11th, and the enemy is attacking with infantry or tanks that have to get through those guards, that means Bloody 11th is going to get buffed before they attack, before they kill off the guards and attack into it. So yes. Entrenched, I just got a copy. I just put it in here. There are tons of guards. Notice I don't have any Glamour Boys because I have not gotten any Glamour Boys. So I haven't spent any, not that they're not good or whatever, but I haven't spent any wild cards on them. And I don't want to get too reliant on the quality of the cards. And so we have 1 copy. We're going to put it here. There are tons of guards targets that we could use. Speaking of which, a combination I haven't actually gotten to work out because it's just a one of. But mobile defense, it's there primarily as an anti-aggro speed bump or late game, maybe 2-for-1. But conceivably, because it is a guard unit 3-2 that operates for 1, you could throw Entrenched on there. You could zoom it up to the front line. And because it has Fury, I mean, it also has Salvage. I mean, you could attack the enemy HQ, then you could turn around and attack an enemy unit. And even though you're going to lose that tank, your T-70 at the end of turn, you now get to salvage whatever it is you killed. And again, that's with 6 attack. You probably just want to go right to the HQ if you could deal 12 attack. Anyways, it seems good on guard tanks that have some attack and some low operation costs. So, all right, Frontier Force is here as a one of. 2-5 with Fury is I think it's a pretty good anti-aggro tool. It's just that. Is that usually by the time it comes down, it could probably 2-for-1 in aggro. an aggro attack, I think. And then the other garrison unit is just there for, free pings unless the other side does something. But having a garrison unit down means that if entanglement pops, then they actually start mattering. And then, well, anyways, that's that. So this one I put the hammer in. I also put one copy of the people. Because if there just is something on the ground level that I can't deal with Bloody 11th or anything else, this is just remove it. And hopefully we can deal with everything else that comes our way. This is more for the fighters. I think most bombers are going to have more than 3 defense. But, yeah, this is just for other things that we can't deal with, particularly in the air. And this is for clearing the way if Bloody 11th needs it. This is for getting out big guards against a crowded board. Because we have a lot of orders, we may not have a lot of units there. Our opponent might think that's because we don't have a lot to play. We do, but we're just waiting to get a few of them built up. And so we can pop this and be on our way. Convoy HA. So this time we're running 4 copies because we don't have a ton of card draw. This time it's actually true. I think I've said it in all my decks, but it wasn't true. But this time it actually is true that there doesn't seem to be a lot of card draw. It doesn't seem... Whoops. I guess I was inactive for too long. All right, as I was saying, yeah, we actually don't have that much card draw. Bloody 11th is what this deck is about. Again, just keeping its defense up, letting it attack. Its attack will just go up, and then protecting it from enemy removal as much as you can, or from enemy units through our guards. 78th Brigade. All right, so this is one of the few other ways to get card draw and gain HQ defense. And because it's a 1/8, if the other side wants to attack this, it doesn't have guard, but if they're attacking this, that means they're not attacking our HQ, or they're not attacking the Bloody 11th. And do they really want to give us a card and +2 HQ defense every turn? It's one of those things the other side probably wants to answer. We're playing one because we have 1 copy. There were other versions of this deck I played with Overrun in it, and it actually worked really well. It was a hard choice to cut it out of this deck because it actually worked in practice way better than I thought. Overrun, if you don't know, it allows your units for 1 turn to attack using their defense rather than their attack. But that was in a more guards setup where I think I eventually moved Bloody 11th, and so it wasn't this deck. But yeah, this is super good in that. And then Slashers is in here as well. It's Fury, it's Guard, and notably, whenever a unit survives battle, add a garrison unit to your support line. So not only is it kind of playing on theme with the Bloody 11th, which is survive combat, which, by the way, includes being bombed and being artilleried, as your opponents may forget the first time they run into it. Every time you survive that, not only is Bloody 11th getting stronger, but if this is out, you are then getting a free garrison unit in your support line until you are all filled up. And if those garrison units aren't dealt with, they're pinging the enemy HQ for 1 damage each turn. And so, yeah, we like this here. The Fury is fine. The 7 toughness, the Guard, the free garrisons for, a deck that should have some units with pretty good defense. It means that it can protect the Bloody 11th and add those garrisons and just be a general pain as it can attack twice and it's got an op cost of only 1. So that is definitely one of the that is probably the unique deck I haven't seen other people play anything like this. I've had good success with it so far, and it's one of those I just enjoy even if I'm losing. So as always with these, I never go short. We've gone long, but those are the decks I used to make Field Marshal. It was like just over a month. It might have been like a month and a day, and I wasn't even trying to do it. And so after that, there were like 15,000 people in the Field Marshal rankings, and played a couple games, one more than I lost, and I think I stopped at like 10,000 because you move up like a lot, I think, in your early games. So it was not as exclusive. I thought the Officers Club was a little bit more exclusive than it actually turned out to be. And it's if you don't believe me, like I actually, okay, so I'm at 9,879. That's the place that I'm in. But anyways, those are my decks. If you're just starting out, I hope that might have given you some things to think about, and hope that you see that, just through playing, it's It's a lot of the limited and standards, and then some of the elites and the specials. As you get them, you can kind of work them into different decks, but you don't need a ton of them to make most of these decks work. So, all right, I think we'll see what happens. I don't want to promise anything, but I think in the next one we will maybe finally get into doing some draft, because we have a bunch of draft tokens. We have a bunch of gold we got to spend on drafts, or else it's just packs. So maybe we'll start doing some learning cards draft style.